everyone, it's Erin from the Impatient Gardener. Welcome back to the garden. In fact, welcome back to a specific portion of the garden. This is the new garden that I created this year, and this is the fourth time that we've talked about it, which is probably a new record for any specific part of my garden, just since January. So in January I did the video where I sort of talked through my design process. And then I had a video where I showed you some of the plants, and then I did a video shortly after planting, and now I wanted to revisit it because things have grown so well. It is astonishing to me how good this garden is actually looking. So what did I do that might have made this garden grow far better than I expected? Well, I did bring in topsoil, and there was some compost mixed in that. You might recall that I had to change the grade of this garden. So I actually brought it in twice because a lot of it washed away during a flood before I had a chance to plant, thankfully. So I actually thought that that wouldn't be a benefit though, because the soil that was here was pretty fabulous. It was years of the soil you find in woods, all full of leaf mold and great stuff. So I actually thought the topsoil was going to be a detriment to this garden. I did add in some Organics Mechanics biochar blend as much as I possibly could, trying to follow the ratio on the bag. That could be it. I don't know for sure. I didn't do a test, so I don't know if that's it or not. It sure as heck didn't hurt. Maybe it's just that, I was pretty good on watering and we had a pretty good rain, so things were able to get established well. I don't know. But many of these plants were started from 2-inch plugs or smaller, and even those are really big. So one of the things that I'm going to keep watching here, but I'm learning, I think, starting with the smaller plants is maybe not a bad idea, because I feel like these plants in 2 months, now keep in mind, I didn't finish planting this until about the 4th of July. So basically in 2 months, these plants are well beyond what I would have bought in like a 4-inch pot and probably a 6-inch pot. Well, anyway, let's get on with the tour so I can just walk you through and show you what's looking really great. So I think I'll just start right here with this big sea of Geranium macrorhizum. I think you probably have heard me talk enough about this plant to know that this is one of my go-to plants. These all came as 2-inch plugs. Look at the size of each plant right now. I mean, it's easily 14 inches across. So I planted these in a big C that does cross the path and go to the other side. And then inside of that, we've got this Hackenlacloa. This is Aureola, the striped one. Now, these aren't growing a ton yet. I'm going to show you at the end of this video some other Hackenlacloas that you will not believe. And I'm just going to take you down the driveway. So the Geranium macrorhiza flows right into another one of my favorite plants, which is Lady's Mantle. Now, these have kind of similar leaf structures, but I put them together because I love the flowers on Lady's Mantle, and so I will work that in wherever. More Pycnanthemum muticum. You guys might remember I have this planted on the other side of the house. I grew bronze fennel from seed, and it hasn't done much. It's only about 2 feet tall, so it certainly doesn't look like the other bronze fennels I'm seeing around. You might recall I've got this blue shag pine here, and this will get bigger. Obviously, it's looking really good. The needles on this are really so beautiful. There's almost like a variegated needle on it. Really pretty. So most of the plants in this area I actually started from gallon-sized pots. So these were bigger plants to begin with. So the size is more of what I would have expected to see here. Now, this is a Cornelian cherry dogwood. There actually are some berries on it. I anticipate this will this is going to get quite a bit bigger. I'm going to grow this as a multi-stem tree. It looks more like a shrub right now. This will get quite a bit bigger, and they get significantly wider than they get taller. So at some point, this will reach to the edge of the driveway and maybe even over the edge of the creek a little bit. In front of me, the dark leaf is Penstemon Blackbeard. Just really nice dark foliage contrast in here, which I think is really key. These beauties right here, now of course these flowers are spent, but this is Veronicastrum virginica, Queen of Diamonds. I think this is a Brent Horvath introduction. It was really beautiful, light pink. These plants are shorter than they will be in the future because, of course, this was their first year. So probably what I will do in future years is, midsummer, early to midsummer, like I would say mid-June maybe, I will cut these back by half and they will get a little bit more sturdy. I'm leaving the seed heads on everything right now just because I think it looks nice that way. But you can tell that they're a little floppy in here. I also have some statues in here. This is Summer Crush, and that's sort of worked around the front here and behind me. So in front of me, I've got more of that statues here. I also have Prairie Drop Seed Terra. It's the Terra variety, which is a little bit more upright throughout here, those were started from like 4-inch pots and they're starting to flower and they're so beautiful. This is really where this garden is going to shine, I think, because I've got a lot of grass in here. And one of them that I want to make sure to show you guys, what a fabulous grass this is. This is Little Blue Stem Standing Ovation and Shirazium. I can never pronounce that one. Anyway, look at how, I hope you were able to see the beauty of this. This is truly blue foliage. This is pretty much full sun here. I've got these in a sort of, I would say it's probably part shade area across the path, and I'll show you the difference on those. I will probably have to move them because the difference is dramatic. I thought I might be able to push it into a little less sun, but I think those will probably get moved. Now this area at the end of the driveway looks, I would say, let's say fairly pathetic here. A couple of things are going on. Basically, I planted this with just Echinacea pallida and Betula Blonde Ambition, which is a side blue grama grass. So first of all, we're going to see this throughout. It turns out that the Echinacea pallida is a favorite with the rabbits. The second thing is that this blue grama grass was planted from 1-inch plugs, tiny, tiny, tiny little plug. So it's just getting going. So that's the view along the driveway, but I want to take you down our little winding path here and just pause to show you a couple of things. This is Heucherella Red Rover. Really, really pretty. Some nice new foliage there. As we move around here, of course, this is more of the Geranium macrorrhizum. And then I've got this Visions Astilbe, which, if you recall, is planted here. It's planted on the other side of the path. It's planted all back in there. And it was so pretty when it bloomed. Bright, kind of raspberry pink bloom. And I've left the seed heads on these things for some interest. In between there, we've got this grass. This is blue zinger grass. Now, we talked a lot about this grass because it is known to spread a little bit. Now, interestingly enough, after I did that last video, Roy Diblick actually, I think, commented on that video and said it should not become a problem when you're growing it in shade, which I am. But I wanted to show you how much this has grown, and you can see how much this guy's starting to spread out. Which I am fully in favor of. That's the point of this. This is my ground cover. And you can see, like, this one's got, you can see where it's sort of popping up. I think it's a beautiful grass and I want it to spread around, but there's been a lot of talk about blue zinger. So that's blue zinger. Now, I did plant amongst the astilbes. If you recall, I put in some of that Hacklencloa all gold that I had divided from somewhere else. I mean, I hadn't planned that. I'm so glad I did it. I'm really happy with how that worked. When I did the video about plants that you probably don't grow, but you should think about, this one was recommended by several people, and I agree. This is Simicifuga or Acti. It used to be one, and now it's the other, but I think you can use them interchangeably. So the only one that's really blooming this year is this one, but this is Brunette. Is the variety. This is the flower on that, and it's so pretty, and I hope once they all start blooming, you'll have these big white spires popping up, and I think that's a great moment in the shade. I think we got to talk about these pulmonarias. These are Dianas. I had 3. I probably planted them too close to one another. I may spread them out, but I don't dare touch them because they're so beautiful right now. These, of course, will get a beautiful pink to blue flower on them, like all pulmonarias do, but who cares? Because look at that foliage, and look at it in this broader spot. I mean, it's just brightens up this whole area. And the great thing about pulmonarias is they're very easy to divide. So hopefully in a couple of years, I can divide these and perhaps work these throughout the garden some more. But now as we come around the corner here, remember I've got the crested surf ferns over here, which are looking beautiful. You know, they really need to bulk up before you can even see them that well. You know, they sort of blend in with the ground. So they need to bulk up, and I think as the blue zinger grass works in there, that will help. And beyond that, we still have this empty patch. I have persicaria coming for that spot, and it will be extended across the way. And we are going to talk about what's growing in the crick in a minute. Over here, this is just a repeat of what we have over there. Of course, you recall that I've got some thalictrums here. They haven't done much yet this year, to be honest. And then the lady's mantle curves around the edge of the path. I popped in a couple of spare nicotianas, including in a hole in this stump, because I always love that. They're getting a little floppy and they're in the way, but I don't care. Then here we have another grass. This is Melina transparent, and this was another really small grass when I got it, or small plant when I got it. And again, hard to see, but I think you get the idea of what it's going to do, which is, it will get much taller than this, by the way, but it's just these beautiful airy wands of flower that sort of drift around, which is going to be a little bit of a break from the driveway, but not enough that you can't see what's beyond. Look at the Cat's Pajamas Nepeta. This again was a 2-inch plug. There are several of them in here. I've not cut these back. They're still blooming. I think you can see, and those are going to extend all the way over here through the Melina. I mean, I think you can see that this is just going to be a wash of this beautiful blue color. Really highly recommend this Cat's Pajamas Nepeta for a small Nepeta. Okay, so I'm standing in the crick, or what is supposed to be the crick, or creek. We say crick. This is the area, there are issues here. So the first problem is that, do you notice how tall I'm standing in comparison to where the plants are? That's an issue. When we had that flood in June, all of the gravel from our gravel road, which is a shared road, whooshed through here and filled up the creek. So this is a whole bunch of road gravel. And we've sort of been trying to figure out what we're going to do about it. I guess we just have to get shovels and start digging, because clearly this needs to be deeper. I've been trying to, there are rocks that line this creek, but over the years they've been silted over. I've been trying to sort of pull them out and stack them up. It's an issue, and we think we might need to bring in some professionals actually to help us deal with that. But do you see how green this is here? This is, let me just pull some out. This is all Creeping Jenny. I didn't put it here. I don't know how it got here. It runs, as you know, as Creeping Jenny does, everywhere. I generally don't worry about it too much because the water will come through here and just decimate it in spring when we get a good rain. But obviously it's sort of creepy crawling everywhere. I've actually gone through here and pulled out several wheelbarrow fulls already, and you can see how much it's filled in already. The other thing that we have in here, and this is always a mystery. Okay, so this is the other plant that's in there. This is a sedum, and I don't, it's some sort of, I guess, native sedum, I'm assuming. I know, again, another thing I never put there, but what blows my mind is that it's sedum that lives in a creek. So what sedum wants to be that wet? I mean, and it's wet right now. So I don't know, but that is also growing in the creek there, so that's interesting. A couple other plants I wanted to talk about. This is that Sky Racer lobelia that I talked about, and it was looking so great in that last video. And so many of you said, boy, is that going to be hardy for you? It's only hardy to zone 6. which was news to me. So let me tell you the story of that. Basically, I was ordering something else from that company and I needed to add on one more thing to make the shipping worth it. And so I added this and I never even checked. So it's now an experiment. But I do have some hardy native lobelia here. I got this, our county had a plant sale, and I got this lobelia. This is, I think, just like greater blue lobelia. And I've planted that along the edges of the creek here where it'll be very happy in this moist area, but awfully beautiful flowers on that. And hopefully that will naturalize a bit. Things are fairly sparse over here. I did plant a whole bunch of liatris, which again, I've left the seed heads on. It was pretty while it lasted. Now we'll have the seed heads on there. And I've also gotten here, this is that, we talked about this before, this is that Angelica. These are first year plants in a biennial, so of course they didn't flower. More bronze fennel. And then down the way, these are looking so healthy and I'm real happy about that. This is rusty foxglove, again a biennial, so hopefully these plants will be blooming next year, but they look really nice and healthy and I'm going to grow more of those next year. Throughout, this is the shady side. You can see that the big hostas got even more eaten by the deer, those poor things, but they'll be okay next year, I think. We've got more, this is Carex pennsylvanica growing throughout here. Nice little grass. I should have bought more of that, so I will have to get more next year to fill in, but hopefully that will become that. I think in this shady area next year, I'd like to add some epimediums and some Japanese anemones in here to brighten this up. I sort of ran out of plants over here when I was planting that. Now these are the other standing ovation grass that I was talking about. These are half the height, maybe a third of the height of the other ones. They're kind of droopy. They're in a shadier spot. Clearly it's not the right spot for them, so they will get moved. I think I'll just winter them over here and move them in spring. Okay, now on the sunny side of the garden, this is a lot more of that, so a lot more prairie drop seed over here. I've got another Melina right here. So there's a couple more Melinas in here, a lot of prairie drop seed, which as it's just growing this year, you know, there's not much happening yet, but once this all fills in, I think that texture will be fabulous. Tons of liatris. I'll be honest, I did that because it was cheap and those bulbs were super easy. So maybe in the future I won't have quite as much, but I'm good with them for now. Okay, if you ask me, by far the best looking grass in this garden so far, and maybe the best looking plant in this garden, is this gorgeous thing. This is big blue stem, Atropogon gerardii Blackhawks. This is a Brent Horvath introduction. It is just starting to flower now, but it has this dark olive green with some purple in it, and the stems are dark, and it is just amazing. Now, I bought this in a big, this was a 2-gallon pot, I believe. So this was a big plant to begin with, but it's doing its thing, and it will get big, but holy moly, is this just a great plant. I do think this is about its height. I mean, I think it's about a 5-footer, so I do think it's pretty close to being the height that you can expect, but obviously it will fill up. And follow me on Instagram, because I'm sure that as these start to flower, I will post some more pictures of these so that you can see these as we go. But oh, I can't tell you how great it is. I mean, the wind's blowing right now and there's movement, and that is everything I wanted in this garden. So it's a new day. I was actually editing the video, and it wasn't until I was editing the video that I realized I ran out of batteries in the mic, so the audio cut out. So I just have a little bit of this garden left to show you, and then one other area I need to show you quickly. But we had gotten through half of the sun portion of this garden over here, and I wanted to just show you a few of the areas that are behind me, and then tell you, well, first let me just tell you a little bit about what the plan for this garden is. So there is an area beyond the shady part where it's still pretty weedy, and beyond that it's actually an area where I've got a lot of sweet woodruff growing. So this fall, I'm going to cut back all those weedy areas, layer on some cardboard, put some mulch on top in preparation for hopefully filling that area in next year. And then there's a lot of areas that need some filling in and some adjusting next year. And of course, we'll have to just sort of see how everything fares over winter. This area over here actually looks really quite good, and that's largely because of Calamintha Montrose White. Such a good plant. I've talked about it a bunch of times before, but it's just this, even though I only planted little 2-inch plugs, it's this airy, floaty mass that's full of pollinators, kind of white flowers with just a tinge of blue on them. And it just fills in this area along the path and sort of marks the entrance to this side of the path, which of course leads on to the vegetable garden from there. I do have the Caradonna salvia as well, which was pretty much blooming when I planted it. I cut it back. It hasn't there's been a few little reblooms, but it's not something you would grow it for specifically as a rebloomer. And then I'm just going to show you around the corner. We have butterfly weed. Now those I bought from our native plant sale at the county. Those were tiny, tiny, tiny little plugs. I didn't have a lot of hope for them. And they've grown a little bit and they're actually flowering and it's lovely. And I love that bright orange in the garden. Plus it's such a great plant to have around. Anyway, so let me just take you to a few little plants and we'll talk specifically about a couple of them and then we're going to move on. So I think you can see that all of the echinacea over here got nipped too, and I know that was rabbits that did it. Rabbit repellent next year, I guess, is the plan. It's so hard to show what the prairie drop seed looks like until it bulks up a little bit, but you can just get a hint perhaps of the flowers here. And they're just these light, airy things. But of course, there'll be some great fall color on these as well. So this is my planting of comfrey. This was here. I've talked about comfrey before. I love it because it's great as a mulch and for making your own comfrey tea, which is a fabulous fertilizer. It's a really beneficial plant in the garden. This is Russian Bocking 14, which is supposed to be a sterile variety. And I just think it's great texture in the garden. And this grows in a, this is sort of a part sun shade scenario here. I actually didn't use any of it this year while it was sort of rebounding from all the work we did over here. But just beyond that patch, there's a couple of plants that I found by this tree. Now this one is all dried up, as you can see. But this is its partner. And I was so excited to see these. This is actually a wild orchid. I saw it earlier this year and looked it up and finally figured out what it is. Now, apparently it can actually be a little bit invasive in some places, and it takes forever to bloom. I don't ever remember seeing this plant anywhere before, so I consider myself lucky to have them, and I hope there's more here. I suspect I probably disturbed a lot of them when we were working in this area. So we've seen two other Hacklencloas so far. We saw the Aureola, the striped one, and then we saw the all gold. And this is the third one and my favorite. I'm not gonna lie, I like this one the best, I think. All gold's a close second. This is just the plain Hacklencloa macra. And it was hard to find this because for whatever reason, this one is not as popular as the other two. But we're standing in this garden that's on the other side of the driveway. And you might recall that 3 years ago, we made this garden and we made it in one weekend, and it was a project we did with Troy Built. And I didn't do a video about it, but I will link to a blog post for you that I wrote about the whole project. And I wanted you to see this because this is what this looks like in 3 years. I bought these Hacklencloas mostly in, I think, 4-inch pots. Some of them were a little bit bigger and I divided them into two. And this whole idea for this garden was born out of a photo I had seen of a design by Tom Stewart Smith, who is a fabulous British garden designer. And it was birch trees emerging out of just like a swath of what I think was Hacklencloa. Maybe it wasn't. I remember the picture, but I don't know exactly what the picture was. And then there were these sort of mounds of either boxwoods or yews sort of emerging from that. So there are 5 boxwoods in this garden, and you wouldn't know it right now because this Hacklencloa got to be 3 feet tall. And I didn't buy small boxwoods either. So there are 5 in here. And I actually keep having to search for them. And what I do is I sort of tamp the grasses down in an effort to sort of get some light to them, because I got to get those boxwoods growing, because if those did come over the top of this would be absolutely perfection, at least in my head. So we got a little bit of work to do because I just didn't expect this, or I didn't actually expect this grass to get this tall, period. And I didn't expect it to get this tall this quickly. So clearly everything is growing in a place where it loves. Now I will leave this grass standing all winter. It's beautiful winter interest. It gets great sort of bronze color. It's just starting to flower now, so those will stay there. And I will it will get sort of patted down, and I will pat it down around the boxwoods. And then of course behind here we've got pagoda dogwoods growing. These are the same kinds of trees that I planted in the containers in the driveway this year. So this is 3 years on, from about the same size as the ones I put in the containers. They've grown really well, one better than the other because this one gets eaten on by deer more often. My goal for this garden was a completely deer resistant garden, and it turns out that pagoda dogwoods are not completely deer resistant in winter. They will come and nip the branches in winter. And behind that I've got 3 dwarf Alberta spruces. And the reason I picked those is because I was looking for tree evergreens that would create a bit of a block, but wouldn't get too tall. I didn't really want anything that was going to grow over 15 feet or so. And this is sort of a part shade area over here. So there are not a lot of evergreens that fit that criteria. So we did the dwarf Alberta spruces, and we actually planted them up on a berm to give them a little head start. And I think if we can keep those nice and healthy, those should be like the perfect plants over here. Because there's just, the whole point of them is just to create sort of a screen backdrop for the rest of this rather simple garden. Now, when I went about creating the garden on the other side of this, it was really important to me that there be some relevance between these two. I didn't want an exact copy, but I think these flowing grasses absolutely reference what's going to be happening in the other garden. And maybe I'll add some boxwoods over there at some point, we'll see. There's always time to change things around, but I did want to show you what this garden looks like 3 years on. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that tour of the update on this garden. I wasn't really necessarily intending to give you a thorough tour again on that garden this year, except I just can't believe how well things grew. I am frankly astounded. Never underestimate plants, and I think that garden is a great example of why you should space your plants properly. And maybe, I mean, I'm always been a person about finding the biggest plants I can and then planting that, or that I can afford. I'm changing my mind on things, I think, because what is happening over there in terms of how much plants have grown in 1 year and how healthy they look, I think it's a good thing. Thanks for watching. Remember, I'm going to put links in the description to all the videos and blog posts that I've done on either one of these 2 gardens. So if you're looking for more information on anything, check there, but I'm always happy to answer your questions as well. And I hope you're having a great day in your garden.
Hold up just a minute. Been looking for some help just to find myself. Yeah. Been losing my focus like 1,000 times before. Can't take this anymore.